So contribution is what Terumah means. And the verse is, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. Va'asuli mikdash v'shachanti betocham. And I also wanted to dedicate Le'uli Nishmat for Hanatzivia Gordon Bas, Rabbi Ephraim Zalman, and that's my grandmother-in-law, Bubby Gordon, that passed away this Pesach due to COVID, and also my great-grandmother from my mother's grandmother actually is Mabel Butler Bas Sarah. And coming up is the yard site on the 21st of Adar is the yard site of Rabbi Elimelech Weisblum of Lezhensk. And he was a student of the Maggid of Mizrach. And we were just learning some of his insights last week of the Torah portion from Mishpatim. So I made the shorter talk and I typed it up and condensed everything into bite-sized pieces. So this week's Torah reading, we got to look into the way which Hashem has made it possible to establish an eternal dwelling place within us. And I was reading a writing from Rabbi Jonathan Sack, the former chief rabbi of England, Zochrona Livracha of righteous memory. He explains the linguistic connotation of the verse Shechen, and which means to dwell. And he explains that this word is derived from the word Mishkan, meaning sanctuary. And this is the place where the divine presence dwells, the physical place that's inanimate, but it was next to us. So we say Shekhinah, and we won't find Shekhinah in the Torah because this is from the root of the word. So for the divine presence, that's what we say for that. So we're going to zoom in on the imperative points in which he elaborates on the cognitive insights and application of the ideas to the concept of the verb to dwell. And he says that the central meaning to this verb is the idea of closeness. So Shechen means neighbor, and he pointed that out, that just as our neighbors live in nearness to us, alongside us, this is what this is what our ancestors, this is what the Israelites wanted and what they needed. So Hashem gave them this Mishkan as a feeling to be close to him, just as we're close to our neighbors. So we're going to look at Mikdash Me'at, because that's what our homes are. Our homes are little sanctuaries. The Jewish home is called the Mikdash Me'at, and the women, we can be likened to the Kohen Gadol, so the high priest. We run our houses to elevate Hashem in all that we do, and the high priest lights the menorah. We light the Shabbos candles. The bread that we bake can be compared to like the showbread in the temple, and our cooked food is like the korban, the sacrifice, and our tables are like the altar, the mizbeach. So we say that the fear of Hashem is the beginning of wisdom. We say Reshit Hokmah Yirat Hashem. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So this is exactly our goal, is to establish our homes with godliness and fear of Hashem. So that the woman rules that world in the house, right? So I also wanted to bring down the concept of Terumah, of Mosar. So Mosar is the opposite of contribution. It's the extra luxuries that we really do not need. So if we have extra, we can also give to charity. And the contribution is given by individuals based on their heart and willingness to give. So in this Torah portion, we look over the elements of gold, silver, and copper, and we look at those things that you would think that the gold is more of value, the silver is more of value, and the copper is lesser value, but that's not really what it is. It's the motivation behind the elements that are the true value. So there's a beautiful chazal in Talmud Yoma 76a, and it says the attachment of the golden rim, the crown, projecting upward and encircling the top of the Aaron symbolize the crown of Torah, which is available to whomever wants it. So may we grab our crowns and continue to elevate godliness in our worlds in each domain of our lives, within and around. So the questions I left for Q&A, they're just fun quiz questions, and I'm sure that we can study all these on our own, in our own time. And some of them just ask like what the dimensions of the arm were, and it's the kind of questions to kind of spike your curiosity so that we go run and look up the things. There's different readings that I was looking into, and two of the books are written by the same rabbi. They're just written at different times, and they just bring up different points about the Torah portion and different insights that we can look into. And Rebbetzin, Hannah Brock Singlebaum's book, she brings in like the tent of Sarah. So I was just read a little bit of what she says. She says, in the Parashat Haye Sarah, we learn that Yitzhak brought Rivka into his mother Sarah's tent, and that's in Bereshit in Genesis 24:67. And Rashi explains that the tent of Sarah was unique in three ways. While Sarah was living, a light had been burning in the tent from one Shabbat Eve to the next. There was a continuous blessing in the dough, and the cloud of glory was always hanging over the tent. However, since her death, all of this had stopped. So when Rivka entered, these three blessings reappeared. Thus, we see that the Mishkan is modeled after the home of Sarah Imenu, our mother. The eternal light of the menorah corresponds to the light burning in her tent, and the showbread that would stay warm and fresh from one Shabbat Eve to the next is compared to the blessing in her dough. So the cloud of glory hanging over Sarah's tent is the same cloud that covered the appointed tent and filled the tabernacle with Hashem's glory. Shemot 40:34. And it says, these special qualities of the Jewish home were inherited by Rivka. She transmitted them to the chain of future Jewish women. We are the receivers of these spiritual genetics that enable us to enter the tent of Sarah and transform our home into a dwelling place for God's feminine indwelling presence, Shekhinah. So if anybody else has any great or beautiful insights to add, that would be lovely. Let me see what else. Okay, yeah. And we also wanted to add, somebody sent some prayer requests in, and it was for, I cut and paste to my notes. Fega Malka Hinda Bas Naomi Elisheva Cohen, and also to daven for, and these are all for Refuah Shlema, for Chaim Gershom ben Gisha and Asaph ben Avital for Refuah Shlema. But somebody said the questions, if you saw in the video, it did show one of the questions on here. And we're looking at that, the physical components of that and all this beautiful things, but we're really, our bodies and our minds, our souls, that's really what contains the Shekhinah, Hashem's presence to dwell within us. And I think I mentioned that I think I made the lecture a little bit shorter, but I was saying that we do the small tissue. I don't know if you guys study Hasidus, but we're studying, the Tanya, we study Hasidus. It talks about Teshua, Tatan, Teshua, Ilua, that we have these, the teshuvas that we can make to become closer to Hashem, and then we can, through Devikus and through cleaving to Hashem is how we actually build up our worlds, our Mishkan, and our dwelling place for Hashem. And that's what the really big important part of it is. And so we become those, the dwelling places in our bodies. It showed that, let me see the dimensions of that in here. So yeah, it showed that what were the dimensions of Aaron, and it says 2.5 cubits in length, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits in height. And the stave, the purpose of the badim, the staves, were to carry it. And I don't know if you guys remember that story when they had put it on a cart, which also brings light into the importance of following instructions and following directions, which we have to constantly remind our children and ourselves and everyone to do, is when he went to stop it it from falling, and he was killed immediately. That was like, why would that happen? He was trying to do a good mitzvah. He was trying to stop it from falling, but they weren't following the instructions. And there was a reason why they had the staves, and the staves were, this is how it was to be carried. And they weren't following that instructions. It wouldn't have happened if they were following what the guidelines that Hashem gave. So I thought that that was really cool that they had that in there. What was the purpose of the staves? And that was to carry it. The purpose of was to carry the Aaron, the Ark HaKodesh, the Aaron HaKodesh. So I thought that that was really important. And it talks about the different dimensions of each of the curtains and the corners.
And the colors, right? Everything was so specifically chosen for, and there was like some chassidus behind each one of these things, right? Like measurements and the colors chosen.
Pass, and it feels like it was 10 minutes. Once you're in Torah studies, it's like amazing. So
there's a question
from Ellie
Sheva.
How can a single Jewish woman achieve this? Achieve what?
There was a couple points before it.
Yeah. It says, I have a question. We talk about how a Jewish woman makes her home into a mishkan, but it's more in terms of her as a wife and a mother. How can a single Jewish woman achieve this?
Oh, so okay, single woman. So I kind of like that question. I kind of relate it to, like, I look back to when I was single, what was I doing to bring the Shekinah, to bring godliness into my domain, into every domain of my life. I was looking at, okay, obviously I'm going to look and follow, okay, Torah, I got Torah study, mitzvot, and I'm not going to worry. And I wasn't worrying, and the Shekinah and the godliness was around me. And then when I started to worry, I had a big bag of, I remember I had a big bag of grocery in my hand. I had, money and everything. And I was like, why am I worrying? Look at all this. And I was literally right next door to the shul. So I was like, okay, I was 3 miles away before previously, and I wasn't going to shul because I was like, I wasn't getting married. I was in school. So I was renting my mother's house, one of my mother's properties. And then I tried to walk that 3 miles, and it was like, not happening. My legs were burning. And I knew it was good. I was like, not on Shabbat, then I'm not really achieving anything. So I literally found an apartment next door to Chabad, to the shul. And I was like, all of this stuff, I really was doing the Torah study. I was lighting my Shabbos candles. I was making the brachot. I was doing all of the things in the domain of Torah to build my world, to build my dwelling place up, and to have my home represent the place that godliness would dwell. And I was single, okay? So that's what I was doing. I was still separating challah, I was breaking bread, I was participating in prayer groups, and I was also having people, I was inviting guests over. I was trying to get involved in activities, volunteering at shul, anything that I could cleave in through Devaikis and through studying Hasidus and cleaving to Torah scholars and stuff like that. And I was being really greedy, but I don't consider it the positive greedy. You're greedy for Torah. And when I was single, I was asked, are you going to get married? I'm like, I want to marry a Talmud Hakam. I want to marry a Torah scholar. I want to marry, that's when I get married. That's what I want to do. And that's what happened. So how does a single person do it? You do it by cleaving to Hashem through Devaikis, through davening, and through being as involved as you can, like, going to events. And I know there was an event where we had in, not too far from here, it was close to the Bay Area. Rabbi Manis Friedman came, that women's event that he has, an organization that he works with, that he helped establish, that they came. That was a beautiful thing, to just pick up a lot of women in the car and just go on the getaway, go away on these women events that are associated with very, active members of the Jewish world, So I think it's doing that, and then if everything will come into place once you're doing that, because you're walking with Hashem, whether you're single, whether you're married, you're walking with God. So that's how a single person would do it. The same way as married people, you're both supposed to be walking with Hashem, but that single person has to walk with Hashem, and then Hashem provides that match for them, so they can walk together with Hashem. That's how I look at it. Anyone else have insights?
I would just say, to the Rebetzin's point, to your point, yeah. And Chabad Chassidus says that, why does it say them and not dwell within it? And to dwell within them is the commandment that we should each make ourselves a mishkan. And how do we do that? By making ourselves holy, by separating ourselves, by doing Torah mitzvahs, by, you know, by creating that separation of holiness, I think is how we do that. And that happens single, married, all the time. I don't think there's a difference there. I think the Mishkan is just yourself and making yourself holy so Hashem can dwell within.
Yeah, separating, because, and I was going to say, I was driving around later to go run some errands, and I saw buildings that were built that I didn't even know they had built them. I was so separated. I didn't even know what was being built around my community out, you know, outside in the regular world. Places I drove before near the mall, near that, I was like, oh, that's there? When did that appear? You know, that's how connected I was that, you know, I was so connected to Torah and my activity in Judaism. I wasn't really worried, and I didn't really realize the things that were going on outside of my domain, my little community, my little, you know, my little bubble. Or we want to say, it wasn't isolation bubble because I was interacting with my people, but I wasn't so much as, you know, I don't know. It was like really weird. It was like you're in this, it doesn't even feel like time was moving. That's how wrapped up and close I was with my Torah studies and with my group. And I really felt I couldn't get away from that. I did everything I could to be really immersed in the Judaism and culture, and you know, just, it was, the separation thing is very important, because anytime I'm working at a public school, I hear all sorts of music, and that would like ring in my head. I'm like, oh, whoa, that's what those negative programs want to do. They want to get into your brain cycle and start looping so that you start craving, oh, maybe it's okay. Maybe that won't hurt. And then that pulls you away from godliness, you know? So it was, you know, it wasn't really that difficult for me because, you know, they're kids, and I'm like, oh, okay, those are kids, those and that. I really don't have to pay attention to it, but it's just that separation, you know. It wasn't that difficult for me because I really didn't have people trying to pull me the other way. And a lot of people, I know it's difficult because they have people try to pull them back into, or pull them toward a certain way that's opposite